She thought she had finally escaped the nightmare. For years, Sonia lived under the shadow of abuse, first from her childhood home, and later in toxic relationships that left her scarred in ways she struggled to put into words. But at last, she believed she had found love. She believed she had found safety. Just 1 month after her wedding day, the man she trusted with her life revealed his darkest secret. He wasn't her protector. He was her trafficker. This is the story of Sonia. A story of survival, betrayal, and the strength it takes to reclaim your life after your trust has been shattered in the cruelest way imaginable. Sonia was born in a small town in the Midwest. From the outside, her family looked ordinary. But inside their home, her childhood was marked by constant fear. Her father had a temper that could ignite with the smallest spark. Her mother, struggling with her own battles, often withdrew instead of protecting her children. Sonia was only 8 years old when she first realized that home would never be a safe place for her. She remembered nights when shouting echoed through the thin walls of their small house. Nights when her father's anger turned into fists, not only against her mother but sometimes against her as well. She would curl into the corner of her bedroom, hugging her pillow, praying it would be over soon. By the time she was a teenager, the physical abuse gave way to emotional cruelty. Her father would tell her she was worthless, unwanted, destined to repeat her mother's mistakes. Her self-esteem was ground down before it even had the chance to grow. School wasn't much better. She was quiet, withdrawn, and carried invisible wounds that her classmates couldn't see but could somehow sense. She was bullied for being the shy girl who never spoke up, never smiled, and always kept her head down. But inside, Sonia dreamed of escape. She dreamed of love, the kind she saw in movies, where someone would look at her and see her worth. She longed for the day someone would protect her, cherish her, and make her feel safe. At 17, Sonia met her first boyfriend. He was older, confident, and seemed to see something in her no one else did. At first, she thought he was her escape, but it wasn't long before his charm twisted into control. He isolated her from friends. He mocked her dreams. He manipulated her into believing she had no one but him. The relationship turned toxic, and by the time she was 19, she was trapped in another abusive cycle. When she finally left him, she was broken, convinced she was unlovable, convinced every man she met would only hurt her. But Sonia wasn't ready to give up. She still believed that somewhere out there, love existed. She clung to that hope like a lifeline. It was in her mid-20s when Sonia met Michael. Michael was everything she thought she had been searching for. He was polite, charming, and attentive in a way that made her feel seen. He opened doors for her, sent her good morning messages, and listened to her stories without judgment. To Sonia, it felt like fate. After years of mistreatment, Michael seemed like a dream come true. Her friends noticed how happy she was around him. Even her mother, usually distant, commented that Michael seemed like a good man. For the first time in years, Sonia allowed herself to believe that she might finally be safe. Their relationship moved quickly. Within a year, Michael proposed. Sonia, overwhelmed with joy, said yes. Her wedding day felt like the start of a brand new chapter. She walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispering to herself that she was finally free from her past. But she had no idea that her nightmare wasn't ending. It was only beginning. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. Michael was attentive. He made Sonia breakfast in bed, sent her little love notes, and told her she was beautiful every day. After years of abuse, Sonia soaked up the affection like dry soil soaking up the rain. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. It started with the small things. Michael would comment on her clothes. "Why are you wearing that? You know I like you in dresses." He began questioning her when she wanted to see her friends. "Do you really need to go out tonight? Shouldn't you be spending time with your husband?" At first, Sonia brushed it off as normal newlywed adjustments. After all, marriage was a partnership, right? But the comments turned into demands. The suggestions turned into rules. Within weeks, Michael had taken control of Sonia's phone, her social media, even her bank account. He told her it was for her own good that a husband should take care of these things. Sonia, conditioned by years of abuse, ignored the discomfort brewing inside her. She wanted so badly to believe Michael was different. But soon, his mask began to slip. It was a Friday night. Sonia had cooked dinner, a simple pasta dish. Michael walked in late, clearly in a foul mood. He sat at the table, took one bite, and slammed his fork down. "This is what you call dinner?" he snapped. "You can't even do this right." The words stung. They felt too familiar, echoing the insults of her father and her ex. Sonia felt her stomach tighten. But before she could respond, Michael's expression softened. He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm sorry, babe. Work's been stressful. I didn't mean it like that. You know I love you." And just like that, her heart melted. She forgave him. It was a cycle she didn't recognize yet, but one that was about to consume her life. Criticism, then affection, cruelty, then charm. A calculated push and pull that kept her tethered to him, desperate for the version of Michael who seemed loving and kind. By the second month of their marriage, Sonia realized she hadn't spoken to her best friend in weeks. Michael had convinced her to cut ties with almost everyone in her life. "They don't really care about you," he would whisper. "They're jealous of what we have." He began telling her what to wear, where to go, when to sleep. He controlled her food, her money, even her hair. One evening, Sonia suggested she might look for a part-time job again, something flexible, maybe in retail. Michael's reaction was explosive. "Are you kidding me? You think you're gonna work? What are you trying to do, embarrass me? My wife doesn't need to work. I'll provide everything." At the time, Sonia thought it was about pride. But it wasn't pride. It was control. Because soon Michael revealed what he really wanted from her. It was late one night when Michael sat Sonia down. His voice was calm, measured. "Babe, we need money. And I can't keep working like this. But you could help us. You could make us so much." Sonia frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Michael leaned closer, his eyes cold. "You know what I mean. You're beautiful. Men would pay for you." Her blood ran cold. "Michael, no. I can't." He cut her off with a sharp laugh. "Can't? You will. You're my wife. You do what I say." That night, Sonia cried herself to sleep. But when she woke up, Michael was the affectionate husband again, apologizing, bringing her breakfast, telling her he loved her. And that morning, when he kissed her forehead and whispered, "Do this for us, for our future," something in her broke. She didn't realize it yet, but her life was about to spiral into a nightmare darker than any she had faced before. The first time Michael forced Sonia into trafficking, she felt like she was outside of her own body. He drove her to a cheap motel on the edge of town. The neon lights flickered above the cracked pavement as he pulled into the parking lot. Sonia sat in silence, trembling, her hands clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. Michael parked the car and turned to her, his expression cold and sharp. "You're gonna do this. You don't have a choice." When she shook her head, tears streaming down her face, he grabbed her wrist so hard she felt the bruise before it even formed. "You think you can say no to me? You're mine, Sonia, mine. And you're gonna do what I say." That night, Sonia's world shattered. The girl who had once dreamed of love and safety realized she was once again trapped, but this time, in a prison far more dangerous than the ones she had known before. From that night on, everything changed. Michael became both her captor and her trafficker. He monitored her constantly, kept her under surveillance, and reminded her every day that if she ever disobeyed, there would be consequences, not just for her, but for her family. Sonia lived in constant terror. Each time she thought about running, Michael would tighten the leash, whether through threats, manipulation, or sudden bursts of violence. And still, Sonia held on to a tiny spark of hope. Somewhere inside, she believed she might escape. But at the time, escape felt impossible. Every morning, Sonia woke up with the same knot in her stomach, the dread of not knowing what Michael would demand that day. The house that once felt like a home had turned into a cage. Michael monitored her phone calls, her movements, even the way she spoke. If she hesitated, if she refused, or if she showed the slightest sign of resistance, his eyes would harden, and she knew violence was coming. He took her ID, her bank cards, and all her personal documents. She had nothing that proved who she was outside of being Michael's wife. He told her over and over, "You belong to me now. Without me, you're nothing. No one will believe you. No one will help you." And after everything Sonia had been through in her life, part of her believed him. Michael didn't just use threats. He used psychology. One day, he'd be cruel, shoving her against the wall, calling her names, reminding her she was worthless. The next day, he'd show up with flowers or a new dress, whispering that he loved her, that everything he did was for their future. This cycle of abuse, known as trauma bonding, kept Sonia locked in place. The brief glimpses of kindness made her cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the man she thought she married was still in there somewhere. But those moments never lasted. Michael began arranging meetings for Sonia several nights a week. Sometimes it was in seedy motels, other times in strangers' homes. He controlled every detail: who she saw, how long she stayed, and how much money she was supposed to bring back. If she earned less than what he expected, there would be consequences. One night, Sonia came home with only half of what Michael demanded. His face twisted with rage. "You think you can play games with me?" he shouted, slamming her against the doorframe. "Do you want me to remind you what happens when you disobey?" The bruises on her arms and ribs the next day served as his reminder. To survive, Sonia learned to disassociate. She trained her mind to detach, to numb herself, to pretend she was somewhere else. She stopped thinking of herself as Sonia and started thinking of herself as a shell, a body that didn't belong to her. It was the only way she could survive. Despite Michael's control, cracks began to appear. Neighbors noticed Sonia rarely left the house alone. Friends who tried calling her found her responses short, scripted, almost robotic. One former coworker reached out, asking if she was okay. Sonia wanted so badly to scream for help, but every time the words came to her lips, she remembered Michael's threats. "If you tell anyone, I'll hurt your mother. I know where she lives." The thought of her mother, fragile and alone, kept Sonia silent. Still, there were moments when Sonia tried to fight back. Once, when Michael left the room, she grabbed his phone and tried to dial 911. But before she could press call, he caught her. The punishment was swift and brutal. Another time, at a motel, she slipped a note under the bed, hoping the cleaning staff would find it. But the note was never discovered. Each failed attempt chipped away at her hope. And yet, somewhere deep down, a spark remained. She told herself, "If I give up completely, I'll never get out alive." The breaking point came 6 months into her nightmare. It was a bitterly cold evening when Michael pushed her into another motel room. The man waiting inside was older, cruel, and rougher than the others. The experience left Sonia shaken, physically and emotionally shattered. When Michael came to pick her up later that night, he didn't ask how she was. He only counted the money. For Sonia, something inside snapped. She realized then that Michael would never stop. He wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to soften. He wasn't going to love her. If she didn't escape soon, she would die either at the hands of Michael or at the hands of the men he sold her to. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Sonia made a decision. She would find a way out. Even if it killed her, she would not die his prisoner. For weeks after the breaking point, Sonia lived in silent calculation. Every day she studied Michael's patterns. When did he leave the house? When did he sleep deepest? Where did he keep the spare keys? She replayed scenarios in her head over and over, whispering to herself, "If I can just get to a phone. If I can just get to someone who will believe me." But the risks were enormous. Michael had told her countless times, "If you ever try to leave me, I'll find you. I'll make you pay, and I'll hurt your mother." Those words rang in her ears constantly. The thought of her mother being harmed kept her paralyzed. Still, Sonia knew she couldn't endure much longer. One evening, as Michael slept heavily after drinking, Sonia noticed his phone left unattended on the nightstand. Her heart raced. This is it. This might be my only chance. Hands trembling, she picked it up and quickly dialed 911. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My name is Sonia. I need help. My husband is trafficking me. Please, please hurry." Before the operator could respond, Sonia heard Michael stir. She hung up immediately, shoved the phone back, and lay down, pretending to sleep. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would give her away. But Michael didn't wake, and for the first time, Sonia felt something she hadn't in months. Hope. The next day, 2 uniformed officers knocked on the door. Michael, suspicious, stepped outside to talk to them, leaving Sonia inside. Her pulse raced. This was her moment. She darted to the door, eyes wide, whispering urgently, "Help me. Please, he's trafficking me. Don't let him know I told you." The officers exchanged a quick glance. One nodded subtly. Minutes later, they asked Michael to step aside. His charm slipped instantly, his voice rising in anger. "You can't come in here. You don't know what you're talking about." But the officers pushed past him, entered the home, and pulled Sonia to safety. For the first time in months, she felt the cool air of freedom on her face as they led her outside. Michael was handcuffed on the spot. His shouting echoed behind her, but Sonia didn't look back. She couldn't. The days that followed were a blur. Sonia was taken to a safe shelter for trafficking survivors. For the first time, she was surrounded by people who believed her, who treated her not as a victim, but as a person worthy of care and dignity. Investigators pieced together evidence, text messages, financial records, hotel receipts. Victims of trafficking are often silenced, but Sonia's courage in speaking out gave prosecutors the strength to build a solid case. At trial, Michael sat stone-faced as witness after witness testified against him. Sonia, trembling but resolute, took the stand. She told the court about the manipulation, the threats, the nights in motels, the bruises that still hadn't fully healed. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Michael was convicted on multiple charges, including human trafficking, coercion, and domestic abuse. He was sentenced to decades in prison. For Sonia, justice had been served, but her journey was far from over. Healing was not immediate. Sonia struggled with nightmares, flashbacks, and waves of guilt. There were days she could barely get out of bed. There were moments she asked herself, "Why didn't I leave sooner? Why did I believe him?" But with therapy, support groups, and the unwavering patience of counselors who specialized in trauma, Sonia began to rebuild. She learned to silence the voice in her head that echoed Michael's words. She learned to see herself not as broken, but as a survivor. Months later, Sonia found the courage to speak publicly about her experience. She shared her story with organizations that fought human trafficking, using her voice to protect others from falling into the same trap. Her message was clear. If it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. But there is a way out. You are not alone. Sonia thought she had found love after years of abuse. Instead, she was betrayed in the cruelest way possible by the man she trusted with her life. But her story is not one of defeat. It is a story of courage, of survival, of a woman who refused to let her abuser write the final chapter of her life. Pause. Soft, hopeful music begins. Today, Sonia continues her recovery, living proof that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. Her strength is a reminder to us all that love should never come with chains, and that freedom is always worth fighting for.